Hi everyone, it's Tony Tonkin again with one of my daily broadcasts, hoping like hell that at some point someone will be interested in what I have to say. Because actually, when you think about it, some of the stuff I talk about are things that are relevant to me, and I guess to some extent they're things that matter. So welcome to another chat. I hope we chat and that we enjoy. It's pretty one-sided, isn't it, when you consider that I'm the one doing all the talking and you're the one doing the listening, if you are there at all. But this is part of my goal, is to continue having these conversations, and even if they're with myself, who cares? Because I don't. But today, I wanted to specifically talk about respect and how it is that we should talk to each other and what's helpful and what's not. What's a good way of talking to each other and what's an unhelpful way. And the place that I see this implemented the most, or not implemented, depending on which way you want to look at it, is actually around politics. Because it's politicians who regretfully are not our role models. I mean, we need to be honest about that. They don't reflect what we're thinking and how we should be behaving all that well, I don't think. But they're toxic. You know, the type of language that we hear and the accusations, not just by politicians, but by those people, those wonderful, wise individuals who offer opinions about politics, and who think that they have all the answers, everything that's required in order for us to understand better what politics is and how we should be thinking about it. And those people, I'm continually surprised that they're still there, and they're still doing whatever it is that they think they should be doing to help us to better understand where we should be coming from. And I think that the more desperate people become, the more toxic the conversation becomes. The more fearful people become, the more anxious they are, and when they become anxious, they start to express it in ways which are just downright rude. And I guess, excuse me, got to grab a tissue because my nose is starting to run. But it's okay because I haven't got the flu. Just want people to know that. Neither do I have COVID. Thank God. No one in our state has COVID at the moment, so we're doing pretty well. But I wanted to just say that, why can't we be respectful? Why can't we just talk about issues and present our view around those issues without calling people names, without denigrating people, without putting people down? I struggle to understand what prevents us from doing just that. And I guess the best example, there's a couple of examples. I often think of Paul Keating in Australia as being that yobbo who, just called him a name, that he acted like a yobbo when he denigrated people and put them down. And I think that often people do that because they think there's a sense of power and authority in demeaning other people. And so I get concerned that we continually accept it. Like, it seems to be okay to be able to say whatever we like about somebody else, and no one ever pulls this up or says, this is really inappropriate. And particularly when you've got someone like Donald Trump who has turned it into an art form. You've got to agree. So on one hand, we had in Australia this bloke Paul Keating, who was Prime Minister, and who developed into an articulate art form. So he could find phrases and language that were just clever, and put people down appropriately, or not appropriately, but he put people down. And then there's Donald Trump, who just puts it down because he's ignorant and he doesn't understand or care, for that matter, about what people think and how they feel. In fact, he thinks, I believe, that by making derogatory statements about people, for example, saying Kamala Harris is a nutcase or something, when she's clearly far more intelligent than he is, most people are, and so often people tend to want to put other people down when they feel demeaned in some way, where they're not thinking of themselves as being equal to, so they think of themselves as lesser than, and therefore they find statements to make about people which are derogatory. And I don't know how they expect the other people to respond, because I often wonder whether they're making those comments is actually about hurting someone else, so someone else feels hurt by what is said, or whether it's about saying something that you believe is going to hurt somebody because you want to do the hurting. So there's some power in the fact that you want to hurt somebody else. And that's more important probably than the fact that this person will be hurt by whatever it is that you choose to say. And, so kind of, in a bizarre sort of way, sometimes saying those things is kind of counterproductive, because you wonder, well, if you're going to be saying those stupid things, perhaps it changes nothing, really, and how many people get turned off by it, and what does it say about your character if you're going to be completely disrespectful of other people? I think it says that you're struggling for a sense of identity, that you can't find it clever to have an argument. And when you watch Trump, you see that often, that he will not argue because he doesn't understand what an argument is or how to make an argument that best supports his ideas. And as a result of that, he just interrupts, he attacks, because for him, that's the only way by which he can muster any form of credibility in his eyes. But clearly it's not. It doesn't make him credible at all, except for a small base of people who believe that what he does and behaving in that way is strength. So I often think that they're people that would like to be able to say the things that he says and ridicule people in the way that he does, but number one, they haven't got the guts or the power or the authority, they believe, to do so. And number two, that they can't, they're cowards. They couldn't do it anyway. And in his case, he believes that he's such an authoritarian and he has so much power that it doesn't matter what he says or does, because no one's going to sue him for libel, particularly in the US, and no one seems to really care too much that he does. It's almost like everybody's become immune to the bizarre stuff that Trump says. So I think we need to find ways to model respect, to be able to talk to people calmly and to challenge some of their views. So one of the things I've found very helpful is that if you disagree with somebody and what they're saying, often if you seek clarification from them, they're very rarely able to offer it. So, one of the great questions I often ask, I reckon, is, so can you just, look, I'm just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about what you just said, or what did you mean by what you just said? And if people are trying to be smart and they really haven't got the facts, they're going to try and find a way to gaslight you, in a way, by which time you can come back at them and say, look, I just want you to further explain that again, because I don't quite understand what you're trying to say. And often, just by asking them a question, will tie them up in a knot. And they will try to find a way to back out of that. So they'll back out of it by dismissing what you're saying and just saying what they were saying, not making any sense, or they will become angry at you and walk away. Or if they're really smart, they'll try and find an answer and engage with you to have a reasonable conversation, which is all that you're asking of in the first place. So, and it's an interesting exercise to challenge. So I suggest to anybody out there that if you're confronted with a situation you don't know what to do, simply muster up the opportunity, or muster up the courage, I guess, to be able to ask a question. Like, why is it that I'm really curious as to why you asked me that question. I'm really curious as to what you meant by what you just said. I was just wondering whether you could explain that further. So there are many ways by which you can confront the aggressor. And it doesn't, I don't think if someone's being aggressive, it doesn't, I had this situation the other day where I said to somebody, look, I'm feeling quite offended by what you just said. And their immediate response was, well, we can finish the phone call. I said, that's not what I'm asking to do. I'm not asking to finish the phone call. I was just telling you how I felt about what you just said. I'm happy to continue the phone call. So we continued the phone call. They stopped saying the silly things that they were saying that was hurtful. But sometimes, when you admit that you're feeling hurt, people, funnily enough, see that as a weakness. And so they the really terrible individuals tend to want to attack you further once you tell them you're hurt. But then that's a sign that this is a person that perhaps you shouldn't be having this conversation with in the first place. Because, if they're not prepared to understand your perspective, then clearly there is an issue. And the issue isn't with you, it's with them. And if they don't want to understand how their behaviour causes you to feel, then that's a person that is totally disrespectful of you and whom you don't need to have a conversation with at all. So I guess the point today in my rave, remembering that every day I've obligated myself to at least spend some time having a chat here on things that matter. And, again, talking to oneself is a very healthy experience. But this time I just want to talk about respect. Let's find a better way to respect each other so that we can have better conversations, more helpful conversations, and maybe just make life a little bit better for us. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for being with me, the whole one person that's watching or whatever. And I look forward to catching up with you next time on Things That Matter.